Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. So we're going to go ahead and talk more about, there we go, the metric system. So in this section, we're going to be doing conversions. However, these conversions will only be within the metric system. So we'll see in the future, we'll be converting outside the metric system to maybe the US system and stuff like that, the US customary system. But again, as of right now, it is just from metric to metric. And we will be talking about different methods and so on and so forth. So let's go straight to it. So how are we going to convert a quantity from one unit to another? So again, as I mentioned last chapter, sometime or last video, sometimes we have to go ahead and convert certain quantities from one unit to another just because a certain quantity, maybe to measure it in whatever way we are, whether it's, volume, weight, or length, it's possibly just not appropriate to use a certain conversion, so a certain unit. So as I mentioned, again, you're not going to be looking at necessarily millimeters to talk about driving distance instead of using kilometers. So that's a pretty big example. Or again, the weight of a baby. You'll be looking at kilograms. You're not going to be necessarily looking at micrograms of that baby. So certain things like that, that is where we need to make sure to know conversions because of how to appropriately measure certain quantities. So move the decimal to the right if you convert from a larger to a smaller unit, and move the decimal to the left if you convert from a smaller to a larger unit. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. So convert 4 liters to milliliters. So first things first, I always kind of include this one think step of, well, how many milliliters are in 1 liter? And again, that's something you can see in the book in a chart, all the different relationships between the conversions, or again, in our last video, we showed some, I think, which ones did I have? Killi, centa, milli, micro. And then in the book, there are definitely more options. And so, well, 1 liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters. So that is how we're going to go ahead and convert it. So you see these zeros? That is how many times you're going to jump around. So first thing we have to identify is we're going from liter, so a larger unit, to a smaller unit. We want to end with milliliters. We want to be done of liters and now represent our quantity within milliliters. So we will be moving to the right. And the kind of a trick is the amount of zeros you have is how many jumps you'll be moving. So for example, if we look at 4, and again, 4 is a whole number, so there's an invisible decimal point after. And now we go 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 zeros, 3 jumps. So within those 3 jumps, 1, 2, 3, notice we will be filling necessary zeros. So we have 1, 2, 3. So 0, 0, 0. So that implies 4,000 milliliters is our answer. And again, do not forget your unit. I will mark down if you do not put your unit. Okay, convert 62 kilograms to grams. So again, we're going to the right because we're going from a larger unit of measurement, kilogram, to a smaller unit of measure, grams. So with that being said, again, what's the relationship between kilograms and grams? Well, within every 1 kilogram, I have 1,000 grams. So same thing like in the last example, if we have 62, that's a whole number, so we have an invisible decimal point there, and I'm moving to the right since I'm going from larger quantity to, or larger unit to smaller unit, and I go 1, 2, 3. Since you can see here, there are 3 zeros, so that implies 62,000 grams. Okay, so convert 300 centigrams to grams. Well, in this case, centigram is smaller than grams. So we're going to be moving to the left. So, but what's the relationship between them? Well, within 1 gram, that is equal to 100 centigrams. So we're going to be moving to the left by 2 decimal spots, since again, that 0 is what helps define how many decimal spots to move. And again, that goes back to, in general, when we were talking about, I think we kind of talked about something similar to this when we were talking about like the conversion of like decimal. What just happened? Sorry, something just popped up on my laptop. Where if what was it? Oh, the conversion of decimals and percentages when we multiply by 100 or divide by 100, we either move to the left or right by 2 decimal spots. It's the same thing here. In a few sections, we'll talk about a different way how to convert. And, the trick here is just looking at the number of zeros, but it does go back to some multiplication and some division that's kind of happening behind the scenes right now. So if we have 300 centigrams, again, we want to move to the left by 2 zeros. So here we can see here that our answer then becomes 3 grams. Okay. So in this next example, I'm going to break it down into 2 steps. So I think it's a little bit easier. We want to go from 250 micrograms to milligrams. So again, be careful. There's a lot of M's going on here. So I'm first going to go microgram to gram because, again, it's a lot easier to go back to the standard unit. So what I mean by the standard unit, the basic unit, gram, meter, liter, because everything is in relationship to that gram, liter, or meter. So I'm going to break it down into 2 parts. But of course, if you want to do it a little bit of a different way, by all means. So first things first, within 1 gram, there are 1 million micrograms. So that's first what I'm going to worry about. So if I have 250, let me give myself some more space. Here's that decimal point, and I'm moving by 6 zeros. So 6 spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll be adding 3 zeros and moving that decimal up here. So first, I have 0.0000. Wait, how many decimals did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, right. And again, notice that 0 at the end now is an unnecessary 0. So I'm going to be leaving it out. So now I have the amount in grams. But again, I don't want grams. I want milligrams. It was just a little bit easier to break down microgram to gram and then go from gram to milligram. Because again, there's not necessarily a defined relationship that we have in the textbook of going straight from microgram to milligram. So that's why it's sometimes easier to go back to the standard unit of gram, meter, or liter, and then go from there. So now we need to figure out, this amount in milligrams. Well, within every 1 gram, there are 1,000 milligrams. So that means now we're going from larger unit to smaller unit. So that implies we're going to the right and by 3 zeros. So 1, 2, 3. So here you can see now our final answer ends up as 0.25. milligrams. And that is our final answer. And stay tuned for the rest.